Hello and welcome back to the Chateau de Lalande, where today we are in the dining room. This has been one of the biggest transformations in the house, right up there with the Grand Salon, because there wasn't really a room here at all. It was just a cupboard and a boot room next to each other. A huge cupboard that just served the room next door, which we now use as our entrance hall and summer dining room, but which in the past was the only dining room in the chateau. But I wanted a room that was always a dining room and somewhere a little bit snugger where we could have warm family meals together. You can imagine the mess when we finally decided to take down the walls to make these two rooms into one. It was complete hell, and we had to put the new floors down, as I explained in my vlog about making the Grand Salon. Here too we used lovely terracotta floors, and because we ended up with what was a very uninspiring shoebox of a room, it's not a very big room, it's not a very grand room, there were no architectural features. I did have some coving added to give a little bit more interest to the fundamental architecture of the room. And I think that's made a very big difference. I also removed the door that was there and replaced it with a French glass door, which has allowed a lot more light into the room since. All of the reception rooms at Lalande are on the French enfilade system, which means that you walk through one room to get to the other. We don't have any corridor downstairs. The original layout was kitchen at the far end, then the children's dining room, which I've turned into my study. I don't have any children. I definitely didn't need a room just dedicated to children's dining. Though sometimes when my friends are here, I start thinking that that could have been very useful and the previous family were not all that stupid in their decisions. Then this cupboard for the dining room next door, which I've turned into the dining room. Then the dining room next door, which is now a bigger dining room for summer and our entrance hall. And then onto the salons. So that was the layout, and that's the way that we changed it. I was worried at first to make one of the main enfilade rooms into a permanent dining room, thinking that a dining room doesn't get used that often. But I was really wrong on two counts. The first is that we actually love this dining room and we use it a lot. It's used every week. But the second is that even if we didn't do that, the fact that it's an enfilade means that it's seen every day anyway, because we're constantly walking through it to get to any other room in the house. And that's the nice thing about the idea of an enfilade. You don't have any rooms that are completely lost. You actually experience all of your rooms every day. But it also means that you have to think about the flow of colours through your home, because if you're walking through each of your rooms in turn, they're not seen as independent areas. They're all part of the single experience of walking down a corridor. So it's more important that there's a sort of cohesion between everything that you walk through. I really love traditional red dining rooms, so I felt fairly certain that's what I wanted to do here. But at first, we created the room, and then I thought, I don't dare do that because we have to walk through it every day, and I don't want to make this part of the chateau feel very dark as we're going through the corridor all the time. I knew that I loved chinoiserie, so I originally toyed with a stunning green de Gournay chinoiserie wallpaper, but then reality hit as I realised that I couldn't possibly afford it as I still had an entire chateau to wire, so I decided to use paint in the meantime. So I actually painted it Farrow & Ball colour setting plaster, and it was a lovely colour. I'd found a beautiful set of vintage Bernardaud porcelain in a local charity shop, so I put that on the walls, but somehow it was too pale. The room didn't have much personality. It just wasn't my vision of a dining room. A few years later, on a trip to London, I happened to see the most beautiful Cole & Son chinoiserie wallpaper, and I fell in love with it at first sight and bought it straight away, and I needed to find somewhere to put it, and it was exactly what I'd always wanted my dining room to look like, this rich, sumptuous red. So I decided to take the risk and wallpaper the dining room in this dark, rich red with a lot of black and gold on it to make it even darker, and I wallpapered it by myself one winter and immediately fell in love with the room. The willow pattern on the wallpaper is the traditional British willow pattern, and the legend of it is that there is a rich mandarin who lived in the big pavilion with his daughter, and he'd arranged for her to marry a duke, but she fell madly in love with his accountant, and they ran away together over the bridge to a distant garden, pursued by her father. They eventually managed to escape in the boat until her father hunted them down and killed them. But the gods gave them happiness at last by turning them into birds who could live happily together. I had bought every roll of wallpaper that was available from Cole & Son because this was a special edition print and this is all that they had left of it, which means that it didn't quite fit the room. So in order to disguise that fact, because I was determined to use it, I put some plaster mouldings up to make frames within the room. Now, eventually, I would like those to be mirrored with a very distressed old mirror, but for the time being, until I can afford that, I've just painted it red, and each one has a small sconce and some porcelain on it. So it's some of my favourite coffee pots and teapots that I've collected over the years, and I change them around from time to time. I love the set with the coral on. It's a design by Alberto Pinto for Renault. That's an amazing Limoges company. I think that the coral works so well in this room that hopefully one day I will be able to afford to buy the rest of this set for dining as well, but that's in the future still. Here is a set that I bought for next to nothing in an auction in England. I think I paid £10 for quite a large set. This is the coffee pot from it. It's Japanese and there's a little S on everything, so I had to get that. I think it's very beautiful. And on this sconce is my mother's favourite set, which is her gold Spode Fleur de Lis, which my father bought for her for one of her birthdays and which I am under strict instructions not to use, except on Christmas Day I am allowed to get it down. So I never forget to do that. It's my one excuse per year. Somehow, once the wallpaper was in place, I found the entire room much easier to decorate. The curtains in this room were amongst the first curtains that I made in the entire chateau, and they are a beautiful silk from the Silk Gallery. They're golden curtains with birds and foliage, which fits perfectly with the theme of the room, and candlelight glints beautifully against the gold of the fabric in the evenings. I've already created the 2 curtains for the window, and I made the pelmets myself as well, and I've made a curtain to hide a cupboard that we created in a small opening between the dining room and my study, which we've shelved, and I used to keep all of my plates, most of which are Limoges porcelain. I made curtains for the opening between this room and my study, and I like to keep those closed in winter to keep both rooms a little bit snugger. But I also have enough fabric left to make the door curtains for the 2 openings which go through to the summer dining room entrance hall next door. I have to admit that I've had that fabric ready to do those curtains for over 10 years now. So I am now making a solemn promise publicly that I'm going to do those curtains this winter. So if I haven't done them by the spring, you can pick me up on that. By far the biggest piece of furniture in this room is the sideboard behind me. It is English, early 19th or late 18th century. My parents renovated a beautiful English mansion to turn into a nursing home, and this was one of the few pieces of furniture that was still in it, and it's been with us ever since, and I hope I've given it an equally beautiful home here in France. On it, you can see 2 very big candelabras, which I bought at auction in England. I thought they're very fun, very whimsical, and the white really stands out nicely against the red because this room needs bright things in it to lift it a little bit. When I bought it, to be fair, I didn't notice the little fronds that are slightly strangely placed on each of the tiny mermen, and I do wonder now a little bit about the artist's original intentions. My aunt, who is also my godmother, gave me the painting that you can see behind me, which is just still life of flowers. The most important piece of furniture in any dining room is surely the dining room table, and this again was a gift from my godmother. And I think of her every time we have parties around it, because not only did she give me the dining table, but It's really from her that I get my love of entertaining. Throughout my childhood, we would have a lot of our big dinners at my aunt's house because my parents really weren't into entertaining, but my aunt seemed to have indefatigable energy, and at the end of a day of work, she would happily spend hours making an 11-course meal for people served on the most beautiful porcelain. And all of the dinners that I had at her house were incredibly inspirational to me. There's a bar in this room which belonged to my parents, and it was always in my childhood home as I was growing up, even though my parents basically don't drink. But I've always loved the bar. I love any chinoiserie, and the black and gold work perfectly in here, and it's extremely useful for storing all of my glasses. There's also a console, which my father bought for me once I'd bought Lalande. It's a lovely golden console with a mirrored surface, and candles look stunning lit against the mirrored surface because you can see this beautiful flickering light coming from that side of the room. The wall lights were a gift from a wonderful woman who lived next door to us when I was growing up in England. She was elderly by the time I met her, and she'd always lived alone. She spent her life collecting beautiful things. She lived in a bungalow, and it was this treasure trove inside of just wonderful, beautiful things. She was always very kind to me, and she left me these wall lights, and I cherish them, and I make sure that they're always with me. I felt that the fruits and the flowers would work beautifully in the dining room. The most recent additions in the room are the chairs, because I found them in the local charity shop, Emmaüs. There were 6. I felt extremely lucky to have found them because I knew that the gold would be perfect here, and I bought them. And then about 2 months later, I went back to the same charity shop, and there were another 6. Couldn't believe it. So I have 12 matching chairs by sheer fluke, and I'm very happy about that. Another very recent addition is my new black sofa for this room. Before, it really was just a dining room. There was nowhere squishy and comfortable to sit. But over the years, we've realised that for some bizarre reason, this is the warmest room in the house in winter. We do not know why. We found that quite a lot of the time we use this room just for working. My friends will come in here with their laptops and we'll all sit around the table and work together. So now I can work here. I can be editing my videos for you and doing all of the other work that I need to do here. Then I can also lie down and read and relax and maybe watch the odd movie on my laptop on the sofa over there. The only other piece of furniture in this room is a tiny little cutlery cupboard which I found in a local brocante. They were selling half a set of cutlery by Christofle, a set called Boreal which was designed by Luc Lanel in the 1920s, and separately they had this little piece of furniture. I bought both of them, and only later when I got home and I started researching online did I realise that it was the cutlery's original cupboard, and now bit by bit I'm recreating the set. My mother bought me the lovely parrot candlesticks for one of my birthdays. They're one of my favourite things in the room. All of my big dinner parties have my parrots on, or maybe they're not parrots. Are they parakeets? I have no idea. And the big glass urn on the sideboard is one of our favourite things. I found it at a little local auction house in Angel in Islington. And at parties, we fill it with cocktails. It's usually gin and tonic, but sometimes it'll be a rum punch or whatever fits in with the theme of the party that we're having. That lovely urn that sits there so quietly and peacefully for the rest of the year suddenly becomes the centre of attention in the entire house. I'm looking at the moment at this beautiful painting by one of my best friends, Oliver Strong. He is the most incredible artist. And this painting is based on a photograph that he took of friends of ours playing Jenga in the chateau. I actually talked a lot about Oliver's paintings in one of my vlogs, which I will put a link to above me now. There are still 2 main things that I need to do in this room. One, as you can see, the chandelier is not a chandelier and is completely catastrophic. So I'm waiting to find the right chandelier for this room. And 2, I would like a huge rug below the table, maybe a black Aubusson rug. I think that would be amazing for the room, just to pull everything together. I hope that you've enjoyed hearing about Lalande's dining room, and if you ever come here for Chambre d'Hôte, this is the room that we quite often have our meals in and our breakfasts, so hopefully you'll get to experience it for yourself one day. Please subscribe to this channel if you enjoy anything about Chateau life. I'll be putting lots more videos like this out in future. and I hope you have a wonderful Sunday. I'm not on tea today because it's the dining room. Cheers. Now I'm just off to find a little bit of cheese. See you next week.